She went to 2 rehabs. The last one, I put her in against her will, and she hated me for it.
I said, no, this really is. I got your letter today, and we're thinking about coming to see you tonight in the contest. Are you happy with what you're doing?
Carol Burnett seemed to love everyone she worked with. But there was one co-star who crossed a line she couldn't forget. During the 7th season of her hit show, this person's behavior turned ugly. They humiliated guest stars in front of the whole cast. When Carol tried to stop it, things got physical. What happened next shocked everyone on set. This co-star had been with her for years, but their betrayal cut deep. The truth about who it was will surprise you. Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933 in a crumbling hospital in San Antonio. Her birth certificate didn't even list an address. Her parents were already deep into alcoholism. By the time she turned 4, both were drinking every day. Her mother's rage often turned violent. Carol would hide under beds to escape the shouting. Neighbors brought food because her parents wouldn't. Looking back, Carol called it survival, not childhood. She remembered a constant sense of loneliness. Statistically, kids in homes like that rarely escape, but Carol did. Her parents' marriage didn't last long. Her father walked out when she was just 2. By 6, the divorce was final. The court blamed drunkenness and neglect. Carol sat through some of the hearings. She later said it made her feel invisible. Her mother stayed bitter. Her father moved to Los Angeles and drank even more. Still, Carol somehow learned to observe everything. Years later, that helped her build characters that felt real on stage. After the divorce, Carol and her half-sister Chrissy were sent to live with their grandmother. They ended up in a tiny windowless room in a rundown Hollywood boarding house. Rent was $9 a week. Their bathtub was down the hall, shared with other tenants. Mice ran across the floor at night. They lived on her grandmother's Social Security checks, $30 a month. Carol made toys from broken furniture. She read books others threw away. She went to free radio tapings just to feel some joy. In 1941, Los Angeles County said 7% of children were considered neglected. Carol easily could have been one of them. At 8 years old, something strange happened. Carol invented a twin sister named Karen. Karen had curly blonde hair and perfect dimples. Carol would run out the front door, change outfits behind the building, and come back as Karen. She kept this going for almost 2 years. She even invited Karen to a birthday party once. One neighbor wrote to her grandmother, suggesting she needed help, but to Carol, it was her first try at improvisation. She didn't just make up stories. She acted them out. That was the beginning of something bigger. By 9, she was practicing her Tarzan yell on the rooftop. She copied the jungle call from old movies, yelling until neighbors came running. Sometimes police even showed up. She didn't stop. Over time, her voice got stronger. Her lungs stretched. When fans called out Tarzan during her show years later, she could do it on command without missing a beat. It had started as escape. It became her trademark. Survival didn't stop at yelling. Her grandmother had a habit when they went to the movies. After the film, she'd quietly take toilet paper from the theater bathroom and stuff it into her purse. They couldn't afford to buy their own. Carol never forgot those moments. Years later, she'd laugh about it, but at the time it wasn't funny. It was what kept them going. Movies were more than escape. For Carol, they were school. For a dime, she'd sit through double features. She studied the actors, the timing, the way scenes flowed. She paid attention to how the audience reacted. When she built her comedy later, it came from those dark theaters. She even parodied Gone with the Wind on her show, pulling straight from those early memories. Those movie houses taught her everything. Back in their little kitchen, music brought moments of peace. Her grandmother played piano. Her mother sometimes picked up a ukulele. They sang songs like You Are My Sunshine on those nights. It didn't matter how poor they were. Carol learned to harmonize at that kitchen table. It gave her the confidence to sing in front of others. That spark would grow into the musical sketches she became known for. One moment stuck with her forever. She told her mother she wanted to be an actress. Her mother looked at her and said, "You can always write no matter what you look like." Carol remembered the words exactly. God, that hurt. In that moment, she realized her own mother didn't believe in her looks. But instead of breaking her, it drove her. She built a career that proved talent mattered more than beauty. She gave a voice to people who didn't fit the mold. By the early 1950s, her father was barely surviving. Alcohol had taken everything from him. Carol left for New York in 1954 to chase her dream. Not long after, her father died at 47. His liver had given up. Carol said he was never mean, just lost. As her life was just beginning, his was already over. In 1954, Carol Burnett was just a junior at UCLA, unsure of what the future held. She was preparing for her final theater exam when her professor canceled it without warning. Instead of a test, he asked her and a few classmates to perform skits at a party for other faculty members. It felt more like a joke than a gift. Carol had been worrying about her finances and wondering if she'd ever get a real shot at acting. But that unexpected night changed everything. She threw together a comedy sketch on the spot and performed at it in front of an audience of professors. Their laughter wasn't polite. It was real. For the first time, she saw adults in positions of power respond to her humor. What she didn't know was that someone in the crowd had been watching her very closely. After the performance, Carol did something she would later laugh about with embarrassment. She began quietly slipping cookies into her purse. She wasn't being greedy, she was just hungry. Food was often a struggle, and she wanted to take something back to her grandmother. Just as she was stuffing the last few cookies, an older man in a suit walked up to her. She froze. She thought he might call her out or make her leave, but instead he complimented her performance and started a conversation. That awkward moment over cookies ended up being the key to a door she didn't even know existed. The man turned out to be a wealthy shipbuilder from La Jolla. And what he offered was almost too good to believe. He gave Carol and her friend Don Soyan a loan of $1,000 each. No interest, no catch except one. The money had to be used to go to New York and chase their dreams. In today's money, it would be nearly $12,000. For two broke students, it was life-changing. This man, whose name Carol never revealed, asked for no credit, no public thanks. But his act of generosity became the foundation of Carol's career. There were 3 conditions. First, the money had to be repaid within 5 years. Second, his identity must remain a secret forever. Third, if they found success, they had to help other young artists the same way. Carol took the deal without hesitation. There was no contract, just a handshake and a promise. And she never broke it. She paid him back exactly 5 years later. She never told anyone who he was. And once she made it, she quietly gave back through scholarships and secret gifts to struggling performers. That one conversation over cookies created a ripple that never stopped. With the money in hand, Carol and Dawn did something most people thought was foolish. They dropped out of UCLA. It was 1954. Women weren't expected to leave school to chase dreams in show business. But they packed their things and took the train to New York. They used the loan for rent and auditions. That same year, she joined The Gary Moore Show. It was a weekly variety program taped at CBS Studio 50, now known as the Ed Sullivan Theater. Carol was just 26, sharing the stage with veterans of comedy and music. But it didn't take long for her to become the standout. Her sketch work, especially her cleaning woman character, showed off her range. She could be silly, sad, loud, or quiet, whatever the moment needed. The show ran until 1962, and during those years, Carol built the muscles she would later flex on her own show. She also met producer Joe Hamilton, who would become her husband and one of her biggest collaborators. In 1962, her talent was finally recognized with her first Emmy Award. She won for Outstanding Performance in a Variety or Musical Program. It wasn't just her first big award. It was a signal that the industry finally saw her as a leader in comedy. She had been in hundreds of sketches by then, and her name was becoming familiar in homes across America. That Emmy was the start of an extraordinary run. By 2024, she had earned 7 Emmys out of 25 nominations. But that first one mattered the most. It showed her that taking risks and staying true to her voice could actually lead somewhere. Also in 1962, Carol teamed up with Julie Andrews for a special that would become legendary. Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall aired in June and pulled in more than 17 million viewers. It was a mix of music, parody, and sketch comedy. The chemistry between the two women was electric. At the time, executives didn't believe the special would work, but it became a hit almost overnight. It won 2 Emmy Awards, one for the show and one for Carol herself. For many fans, it was their first time seeing Carol as more than a sketch comic. She could sing, act, and hold her own on a national stage. That performance didn't just raise her profile. It launched her into the top tier of entertainers. Carol Burnett married Don Soyan on December 15, 1955. She was just 22. They had met in college 3 years earlier, long before her face became familiar on television screens. At the time, Burnett was still struggling in New York, taking whatever job she could find, working as a hatch-check girl, living paycheck to paycheck. Soyan was also trying to break into acting. But neither of them had found a clear path. Their marriage unfolded in the shadows of small apartments and unpaid bills. It wasn't until 1962 that Burnett's life changed almost overnight when Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall aired and won an Emmy. That same year, their marriage ended. They finalized their divorce on September 25, just as her career was taking off. It was a split that reflected how success doesn't always arrive with peace. Only a few months later, on May 4, 1963, she married Joe Hamilton, a television producer who had worked on her Carnegie Hall special. Their relationship was part love story, part showbiz merger. Hamilton had 8 children from a previous marriage, which he ended the same day he married Burnett in Mexico. Together, they would have 3 daughters, bringing the household total to 11 kids. The house was always full of voices, movement, and schedules. Burnett would later describe those years as both joyful and chaotic. In public, she was the calm and funny host. At home, she was navigating packed dinner tables and back-to-back school events while juggling scripts and costumes. The reality behind the laughter was non-stop work. Their first daughter, Carrie, was born on December 5, 1963. Jody followed on January 18, 1967. Then Aaron arrived on August 14, 1968. But not all pregnancies ended with joy. In early 1965, Burnett had a miscarriage at just 9 weeks. She kept that pain private, even as her star kept rising. But the deepest heartbreak came much later. Carrie struggled with addiction from the age of 13. After years offering to help her through recovery, Burnett lost her in 2002. Carrie was only 38 when she died from pneumonia brought on by cancer. The public often saw only the comedy. They didn't see the sleepless nights, the hospital visits, or the quiet grief that followed. Joe Hamilton wasn't just her husband. He was the producer behind The Carol Burnett Show, which debuted in 1967. That show would become one of the most influential comedy variety series in TV history. But while building that success, Hamilton was also trying to manage a family of 11 kids. Mornings started with breakfast chaos. Evenings ended with production meetings. The pressure built up year after year. And after nearly 2 decades of marriage, they separated. Their divorce was finalized in 1984. Behind their creative partnership was a reality filled with deadlines, emotional exhaustion, and heartbreak. Their story showed how even the most successful lives come with heavy trade-offs. Before her breakthrough, Burnett had taken whatever roles came her way. In 1955, she played the girlfriend of a ventriloquist dummy on The Paul Winnell and Jerry Mahoney Show. In 1962, she played a guardian angel in an episode of The Twilight Zone, which was supposed to be a pilot, but never took off. In between, she was Buddy Hackett's awkward girlfriend on Stanley and a contestant on early game shows like Pantomime Quiz. These parts were odd and sometimes forgettable, but they slowly built her reputation. When her 1962 special finally aired, it looked like an overnight success. But it had taken nearly a decade of strange gigs and small moments to get there. Everything changed on September 11, 1967. CBS didn't want Burnett to host her own variety show. They suggested a generic sitcom instead. Something called Here's Agnes. But Burnett had a clause in her contract from earlier work that let her create one season of any show she wanted. She activated it just in time. The Carol Burnett Show went on to air 279 episodes over 11 years. It was filmed at CBS Television City's Studio 33 and became a landmark in television history. No woman had hosted a primetime variety show before. Burnett broke the rule, set the standard, and never looked back. The show began with something no one expected. Burnett would walk out and take questions from the audience. This started by accident. A producer once sent her out early as a joke, but the audience loved it and it became a regular feature. People asked her anything, how she got started, who her favorite co-stars were, or begged to hear her famous Tarzan yell. Burnett answered with charm and honesty, creating a sense of connection that few TV shows ever achieved. Even today, in her live shows, she keeps the tradition alive. Those unscripted moments became one of the most memorable parts of her career. She didn't just perform. She created characters that lived far beyond the screen. There was the charwoman, a quiet janitor with a mop and a dream. Then came Eunice, the loud, frustrated daughter from the family sketches, who later starred in her own show, Mama's Family. Burnett's face was as expressive as any comedian's toolbox. She could stretch it into sadness, surprise, or joy, all in a single second. Parodies of famous films like Went with the Wind showed just how far her humor could go. These sketches didn't just make people laugh, they shaped what TV comedy could be. The awards followed. Over 11 seasons, the show won 25 primetime Emmys from 70 nominations. It won Outstanding Variety Series 3 times. Few shows in history have matched that level of acclaim. Burnett herself became so iconic that the Golden Globes created a Lifetime Achievement Award in her name. She received it while still living. A rare honor. Her cast members, like Tim Conway and Harvey Korman, often stole the spotlight during acceptance speeches with impromptu comedy that blurred the line between real life and performance. Their moments on stage were funny, touching, and unforgettable. But Burnett never worked alone. She chose her cast carefully. Harvey Korman had already proven himself on the Danny Kaye Show. Vicki Lawrence was a teenager who sent Burnett a fan letter and ended up becoming one of her strongest performers. Lyle Wagner, who had once auditioned for Batman, became the show's announcer and straight man. Tim Conway, originally a guest, joined full-time in 1975. He became known for stretching out sketches with perfectly timed silences and stumbles. Together they made TV magic. Their chemistry is still studied today. Their sketches still played in tributes in classrooms. Harvey Korman had always been a towering presence on the Carol Burnett Show. But by the 7th season, something in him had changed. His moods began to shift without warning. People on set noticed the tension, especially the guest stars. That week it was Tim Conway and Petula Clark. Conway, who always brought joy to the room, got cut down mid-rehearsal. Korman called one of his sketches stupid and didn't even try to hide it. Clark barely got a polite hello. Things got worse when Korman mumbled something cruel under his breath while rehearsing with both of them. The show had built a reputation for laughter and warmth, but in those moments, the air grew cold. Carol Burnett, known for her kindness and grace, finally had enough. She walked straight into Harvey's dressing room and told him that his behavior was out of line. She didn't yell, she didn't insult, but she was firm. What she didn't expect was the blast of anger in return. Harvey told her to stay out of Ophi's business. He even said he'd rather quit after that night's show. When she tried to hold her ground, he physically forced her into the hallway and slammed the door. Carol was stunned. They had worked together for years. That moment shook her deeply. Carol wasn't someone who enjoyed conflict. She had always avoided it. But now she needed strength. So she imagined herself as someone else. In her mind, she became Joan Crawford and Barbara Stanwyck. Tough, sharp, unbreakable, with their voices in her head, she stood tall, walked back to his door, and this time she didn't hesitate. She told Corman that she had already called his agent. He was fired. He wouldn't be coming back. Harvey didn't believe her at first, but when he saw her eyes, when he heard her steady tone, he knew it was real. For a moment, the fight left him. He began to feel the weight of what he had done. The outbursts, the coldness, the missed chances to show grace, suddenly, it all caught up with him. And in that moment, he apologized. He asked for one more chance, 1 week. A full week of rehearsals and tapings without a single outburst. Carol said yes, but only if he stayed cheerful the whole time. And he did.